Solving polynomial equations. This is going to be part 1. We are going to be doing some more with this tomorrow. But I'm just going to start us off just with it already factored or close to factored. And that's what you'll be doing today, is just solving them when they're in a semi-factored form. So we have x squared minus 4 times x squared minus 2x plus 4. And we are going to be doing a lot of what we did last chapter on solving these. We are going to set each factor equal to 0 and trying to solve each factor one at a time. Remember, the factors are where in the parentheses. And so for this problem, I would need to add 4 to both sides, giving me x squared equals 4. So what are my two possibilities of x? If I need to square it to get to 4, what would it have to be? 2 or
-2.
So plus or minus 2. To get that, if you can't, you just basically took the square root of both sides.
How is it plus or minus 2?
Because if I square a -2, it would be a positive 4.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So both of those being replaced into x would result in a 4. So for our other one, we have x squared minus 2x plus 4. If you want to see, is there anything that you can think of that can factor into it quickly, you can always double check that. Most of these are already in a pre-factored form, and meaning that there's not going to be a nice factor that can go there. So that means that we are going to be using quadratic formula. So let's kind of review what we did last chapter. What was step 1 for quadratic formula? B squared minus 4ac. But before we do that, we need to identify A, B, C. And so we're going to do b squared minus 4ac. So b squared would be -2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. So 4 minus 16, which is going to give me a -12. So now I'm going to use a quadratic formula. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So -b is opposite b. So what would be opposite b in this case?
Positive 2.
+2. Plus or minus the square root of -12. Divided by 2 times a, so 2 times 1. So we need to do a little bit of work because we have that -12 that we need to see. Is there any number that will divide into it evenly? 2 will. And do we really need the negative inside of here? No, because the negative comes out as a I. So 2 will, leaving us 6, divisible by 2, which leaves us 3. Do we have a set? So we have that set of 2's and the 3 that gets left behind. So 2 plus or minus 2, which came out, the I which came out, the square root of 3, which stayed behind, divided by 2. So how many places do I need to look to see if there's a factor that can cancel? 3, unless your b is 0. So, are all of these divisible by the same number? leaving us at 1, 1, and 1. Do I need to write the 1 in the denominator?
No.
So that leaves us the answer of 1 plus or minus. Do I need the 1 in front of I?
No.
I square roots of 3. So this is one of my set of answers. This is the other. You will end up with a total of 4 answers by taking your highest power of each of these, adding them together. That gives you how many answers you'll end up with. Or you should end up with approximately. So you end up with 4. So there's 1, 2. There's 2 on this one because positive and negative. And there's 2 on this one because we had the plus and the minus. So that gives you 4 answers. So let's look at this next one. Some of them are going to be a little bit easier. You're not going to have to use quadratic formula for them. You're just going to have to worry about setting them equal to 0. Oops, I forgot to put equal 0 on this one. So we have the quantity of x squared minus 625 times the quantity of x squared plus 1,000. So step 1 is going to work the same for both of these. We are going to set them equal to 0. As we just did. It's just the exact same steps. We're going to, in this time, add 625. So that's a large number. I would not start with doing my upside down division. I would check to see is there a square root of that. So is there something that I can take the square root of and get 625? Ooh, my first check. Anybody have a calculator?
25.
So 25. So when I take the square root of both sides, I end up with x is equal to just 25? Plus or minus. Is either negative 25 times negative 25 is 625, or positive 25 times positive 25 is 625. Now on the other side, we're going to work with the same idea, but with the other equation. So x squared plus 1,000 is equal to 0. So step 1 is to do what? This time we're going to end up with a negative. So anytime we have something that we're taking the square root of that's negative, we end up with what showing up? The I. So can you take the square root of 1,000 and end up with a whole number? No. So that means our upside down division guy is going to come into play. And so if I take 1,000 and I divide it by, what's the first number that you think of? Where we go with prime, you could do tenths, because this is 10 to a power. It would work, giving you 100, which is 10, which is 10. But be careful in this, because if they weren't all the same number, then it could give you to where you miss factors that would match. So like let's say you had 6 and 14, they both have a factor of 2 in them. And so when you're not using prime numbers, you run a risk. If you knew this was 10 cubed, that's not a bad risk. So if you did it the other way, just a reminder in case someone needs to see it the other way. We divide it by 2, giving us 500. Divide it by 2, which gives us 250. Divide it by 2, gives us 125. Divide it by 2, or divide it by 5, excuse me, gives us 25. Divide it by 5, gives us 5. And then we'd have the set of 2s and a set of 5s that could come out. Both ways, we're getting a set of 10 that came out. Because 2 times 5 is 10. And in both ways, we have a 10 that gets left behind. So So the answer is x equals 10I square roots of 10.
And you don't do plus or minus?
And you do need plus or minus. I hadn't written it first.